It was a quiet spring morning in Pleasant Grove, Utah, April 2014. A man climbed into the garage of his estranged wife's home, rummaging through boxes she had left behind. Dust clung to the air, the smell of old cardboard and oil-stained concrete filling the small, dimly lit space. He bent down to lift one heavy, strangely sealed box. Inside, he found something that would shatter the town forever. The lid peeled back. A stench rolled out, sweet, rotten, chemical, unmistakable. He stumbled backward, gagging. Wrapped in cloth in layers of plastic, lay the tiny, fragile remains of a newborn baby. He called police. When investigators arrived and searched the garage, they made an even darker discovery. 6 small bodies, each hidden in its own box, stacked among household clutter. What they had uncovered was a decade of horror. And at the center of it, Megan Huntsman, a mother who had murdered 6 of her own children in the shadows of suburbia. Pleasant Grove, Utah. A picturesque Mormon community where neighbors knew each other by name. Children played in manicured yards and families filled church pews every Sunday. On the outside, it looked safe, clean, moral. But in one house, evil lived quietly for years. Megan Huntsman was in her early 30s during the span of her crimes. To neighbors, she was ordinary. Plain, heavy-set, sometimes seen smoking outside or shuffling past with groceries. But behind that image, Megan's life had collapsed into chaos. She was addicted to meth. Alcohol consumed her nights. She withdrew from family and community, retreating into a detached, cold numbness, and then there were the children. Between 1996 and 2006, Megan gave birth in secret, 7 times. The fathers never knew. The neighbors never noticed. And each time, instead of cradling her newborn, Megan ended its life before it had even begun. The victims had no names, no birthdays, no futures, just fragile cries that were quickly silenced in the dark corners of her bathroom. Imagine the scene. A small, dim bathroom, the muffled sounds of labor, the rush of water to drown out the cries. Megan hunched over, sweat dripping, her face pale and expressionless as another life came into the world. For most mothers, this moment is sacred, the first breath, the first cry. For Megan, it was a burden. She wrapped her hands around the child's tiny neck or pressed fabric against its mouth. The cries stopped. The room fell silent again. Each time she claimed later she was too addicted, too unfit, too broken to raise another child. But in truth, it was something colder, a decision to erase lives she never wanted. When it was done, she cleaned herself, swaddled the body in towels and plastic, and placed it into a cardboard box. She stacked the boxes in her garage, alongside Christmas decorations, forgotten tools, and memories of a family already in ruins. 6 times she did this, 6 infants, over 10 long years, and no one knew. The rising tension in the story lies here. How could a mother hide so much death in plain sight? How could the cries of 6 newborns vanish without neighbors, friends, or even family asking questions? When police entered the garage that day in 2014, they weren't prepared. Officers wore gloves and masks, pulling one box after another from the shadows. Inside, each package was the same. The skeletal remains of a newborn wrapped tightly to conceal the horror. Detectives wept quietly as they carried the boxes out. Hardened officers, men and women who had seen crime scenes of every kind, said this was different. This wasn't a stranger's crime. It wasn't a serial killer in the woods. It was a mother, systematically destroying her own flesh and blood. The investigation revealed chilling details. Megan admitted to the murders without hesitation. Her confession was calm, cold, almost mechanical. She said she did not want more children. She said her meth addiction made her incapable of caring. And when asked if she felt remorse, her flat tone made prosecutors shudder. Neighbors stood in shock as news cameras rolled. This was Pleasant Grove, where mothers were supposed to be nurturing, where families were sacred. To discover that a woman had been giving birth in secret and killing her children for 10 years was beyond comprehension. In 2015, Megan Huntsman faced the court. Dressed in a beige prison jumpsuit, her hair tied back, she appeared ordinary. Too ordinary for the magnitude of her crimes. But her words revealed the darkness within. "I was in no condition to raise them," she told the court. Speaking of the babies she had murdered, "I killed them because I didn't want them." Prosecutors painted a grim picture, 6 infants robbed of life, hidden away like trash. They showed the boxes. They showed the evidence. They played her confession, her voice flat and hollow. Family members filled the courtroom, many sobbing openly. Megan's surviving daughter sat in silence, grappling with the knowledge that their mother had killed their siblings. One relative said in a victim impact statement, "Those babies never had a chance. They never got to breathe the air, feel the sun, be loved. Megan took everything from them before they could even live." The courtroom was tense, every sentence dripping with grief and rage. Megan herself remained detached, her expression rarely shifting. That coldness cut deeper than any words. When the judge finally spoke, the room froze. Megan Huntsman was sentenced to 6 counts of up to life in prison. The words carried a heavy silence. For the families, there was no joy, no relief, just the finality of knowing that justice, however imperfect, had been delivered. Outside the courtroom, relatives expressed their grief. Some said they could never forgive. Others said they simply wanted to forget. But forgetting was impossible. 6 boxes in a garage had burned an image into the collective memory of Pleasant Grove, a reminder of the evil that can hide in ordinary places. Today, Megan sits behind bars in Utah, serving her sentence. She has no possibility of freedom, but her surviving daughters live with the scars, haunted by the reality that their mother's hands ended the lives of 6 siblings they never got to meet. The Megan Huntsman case leaves behind a question that can never be answered. How does a mother become a murderer of her own children? Was it the addiction? The emotional numbness? Or something far darker that can't be explained away? What lingers most is the silence. For 10 years, no one heard the cries. No one saw the tiny bodies being carried away. No one knew 6 lives were stolen before they began. The boxes sat quietly in the garage, waiting to be found. And when they were, they revealed not just a crime, but a nightmare, one that forces us to confront the darkest truth of all. Sometimes the greatest danger comes not from strangers, but from the people we trust most. The final words from the judge still echo. These babies were never given a chance. That is the greatest tragedy of all. A utility worker in Orlando, Florida, stepped into a wooded area just half a mile from the Anthony family home. The ground was wet, littered with leaves and trash, the air heavy with decay. Then he saw it, a small torn trash bag. Inside, a child's skull, hollow eye sockets staring upward through the dirt, remnants of duct tape clinging to the bone. Around it, tiny fragments of clothing, a blanket. The skeletal remains of a 2-year-old girl. Her name was Caylee Anthony, and her mother, Casey, had spent the past 6 months lying about where she was, telling stories about babysitters who didn't exist, inventing jobs she didn't have, and partying while her daughter's body decomposed in the woods. The discovery didn't just spark a homicide investigation. It unleashed one of the most infamous, polarizing, and disturbing trials in American history. Orlando, Florida, summer 2008. The Anthony home sat in a quiet, suburban neighborhood, palm trees swaying, pastel houses lined in rows, the image of stability. But behind the closed doors of the Anthony household, things were crumbling. Casey Anthony was 22 years old. Brunette, youthful, often smiling in photos. On the surface, she looked like any other young mother. But those who knew her best described her differently. Manipulative, impulsive, a pathological liar. She told friends she worked at Universal Studios. She didn't. She told family she left Caylee with a babysitter named Zanny the nanny. That person never existed. Casey wanted freedom. She wanted the party life, clubs, shots, men, bella vita, the good life. Caylee, her 2-year-old daughter, was the obstacle. Caylee was innocent, bright-eyed, with a gap-toothed smile that lit up every room. She loved dolls, loved playing outside, loved her grandparents George and Cindy more than anything. She was a toddler with her whole life ahead of her, until June 2008 when she vanished. The exact truth of Caylee's final moments will never be known. Casey never admitted what she did, but prosecutors built a chilling picture. June 16, 2008. Neighbors later recalled seeing Casey leave the house with Caylee. That was the last day anyone outside the Anthony family saw the little girl alive. Prosecutors argued that Casey used chloroform to sedate Caylee, then placed duct tape over her mouth and nose to suffocate her. Forensic evidence later confirmed the smell of decomposition in Casey's car trunk. Hair found inside matched Caylee's. Computer searches on the Anthony family computer showed terms like How to Make Chloroform, and Neck Breaking. Imagine it. A 2-year-old child, small and trusting, fading into unconsciousness. Her last breath stolen not by a stranger, but by the very person meant to protect her. Casey then placed Caylee's body in her car trunk for days before discarding her like trash in the woods. She wrapped her in bags, covered her face with duct tape, and walked away, and then Casey went out. She partied. She entered a hot body contest. She got a tattoo on her shoulder that read Bella Vita, the beautiful life, all while her daughter's body decomposed in the Florida heat. For 31 days, Caylee was missing. During that time, Casey lied to everyone. When her mother Cindy finally confronted her, furious after not seeing Caylee for weeks, Casey spun more stories about the mysterious nanny, about work trips, about elaborate excuses. On July 15, 2008, Cindy finally broke. She dialed 911. "My granddaughter has been missing for a month," she told the operator, her voice trembling with panic. "It smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car." Police began digging. Quickly, Casey's lies unraveled. At Universal Studios, investigators demanded she take them to her office. She led them through hallways until she finally admitted, "I don't work here." Meanwhile, cadaver dogs hid on her car trunk. Forensics confirmed decomposition odors, traces of chloroform, hair consistent with Caylee's, but Casey didn't seem worried. She spent her days writing letters from jail, flirting with guards, acting as though her daughter's disappearance was just an inconvenience. Then came December, the discovery of Caylee's skeletal remains. For investigators, it was confirmation of their worst fears. For the community, it was devastation. The photographs of that tiny skull, duct tape still clinging to bone, haunted everyone who saw them. In May 2011, the trial of Casey Anthony began. The nation was transfixed. Television cameras captured every moment. Millions watched. Prosecutors argued it was murder. They painted Casey as a selfish mother who killed her child because she wanted her freedom. They showed the Bella Vita tattoo. They showed the photographs of Casey laughing at parties while Caylee's body rotted. They showed the duct tape, the most damning evidence of all. Caylee's death, one prosecutor declared, was not an accident. It was a murder. A mother put her own child's life beneath her desire to party. The defense told a different story. Jose Baez, Casey's attorney, shocked the courtroom. He claimed Caylee had accidentally drowned in the family pool. He alleged George Anthony, Casey's father, helped cover it up. He suggested Casey's lies were the result of years of trauma and abuse. It was a brutal clash of narratives. Cold-blooded murder versus tragic accident. The emotional weight was crushing. Caylee's grandparents sat in court every day watching their daughter on trial for killing their granddaughter. Cindy Anthony wept through testimony. George Anthony was accused of crimes he denied. His face etched with anguish. The nation turned against Casey. Strangers screamed outside the courthouse, holding signs that read, "Justice for Caylee." News outlets dubbed her the most hated mom in America. And yet, Casey sat calmly, often smirking, sometimes even laughing with her attorneys. On July 5, 2011, the verdict came. The jury filed in, their faces heavy with tension. The courtroom was silent. Not guilty. Casey Anthony was acquitted of murder, acquitted of manslaughter, acquitted of child abuse. She was convicted only of lying to law enforcement. 4 misdemeanor counts. The room erupted, gasps, cries, outrage. Around the country, millions of people screamed at their televisions. How could a mother walk free after her child's remains were found wrapped in duct tape in the woods? For Caylee's family, it was devastation layered on devastation. Cindy clutched her face. George shook his head. Outside, protesters screamed, "Baby killer!" Casey walked out of court smiling. Her sentence for lying to police was time already served. Within days, she was free, but freedom didn't mean peace. Casey Anthony remains one of the most infamous figures in American crime. She lives in hiding, occasionally surfacing in interviews where she continues to deny responsibility. "I don't know what happened to Caylee," she said years later, "but I'm okay with myself. I sleep pretty good at night." Those words cut like knives to those who believe Caylee never got justice. The Casey Anthony case forces us to confront a haunting truth. Sometimes justice fails. Caylee Anthony was 2 years old. She never got to grow up, to go to school, to laugh through childhood. Her life was ended before it began, and the person most responsible, the one meant to protect her, walked away. The trial left scars on the Anthony family, broken by betrayal and loss, on the jurors haunted by their decision, on a nation still debating what really happened that June day in 2008. The final image lingers, duct tape across the face of a child, a mother smiling at a nightclub, and a grave in the woods where innocence was discarded like trash. So the question remains, what is justice when the guilty walk free? What happens when a life as pure as Caylee's ends and the world never sees accountability? Perhaps the real sentence is silence, the silence of a child who will never speak again, and that silence will echo forever. 5-year-old Garnett Spears lay in a hospital bed at Maria Ferreri Children's Hospital. Machines beeped around him, wires and tubes snaked into his tiny body. His eyes were glazed, his breath shallow. He had been sick many times before, his short life marked by endless hospital visits, feeding tubes, and unexplained seizures. But this time was different. Doctors scrambled, baffled, as his sodium levels spiked to levels they had never seen. His body convulsed. His little heart struggled. And in the corner of the room sat his mother, 27-year-old Lacey Spears, calm, almost detached, phone in hand. She typed an update for her online followers. "Garnett's not doing well. Please pray for my little man." Hours later, Garnett was gone. The world thought it was another tragic case of a child taken too soon by illness. But the truth uncovered soon after was far darker. Garnett hadn't died from sickness. He had been poisoned with salt by the very person who claimed to love him most, his mother. Nyack was quiet, suburban, almost idyllic. Tree-lined streets, red brick apartment buildings, families pushing strollers down snowy sidewalks in the January chill. From the outside, it looked like the perfect place to raise a child. Lacey Spears fit the image of a devoted single mother, blonde, attractive, active on social media. She filled her Facebook, Twitter, and mommy blogs with endless updates about her son. To friends and online strangers, she seemed loving, doting, an exhausted but dedicated parent raising a sick boy on her own. But beneath the posts, the photos, and the hashtags was a deeply disturbing truth. Lacey wasn't just sharing Garnett's illnesses online. She was manufacturing them. This wasn't the story of a mother caring for a sick child. It was the story of a woman with Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a psychological disorder where caregivers deliberately harm those in their care to gain attention and sympathy. Lacey was addicted to validation. Every like, every comment, every sympathetic message fueled her need for control, her hunger to be seen. Garnett was her stage, his pain, her performance. And Garnett himself? He was a sweet, innocent little boy. Big smile, bright eyes, hair that curled at the edges. He loved playing outside, loved fire trucks, loved life. But his world was hospitals, feeding tubes, and mommy's updates. He was a prisoner to his mother's sickness long before he lost his life to it. From infancy, Garnett was forced to live in illness. When he was just days old, Lacey insisted he couldn't tolerate breast milk, convincing doctors to insert a feeding tube. From that moment on, his childhood was orchestrated. Hospital visits, unexplained seizures, strange symptoms that never quite matched medical records. Doctors began to grow suspicious. But Lacey always had answers, always had explanations, and always had a new photo or post ready for her online audience. But by January 2014, the cycle escalated into its deadliest stage. At the fellowship community in Nyack, where Lacey and Garnett lived, neighbors later testified that they saw her carrying bags of salt into her apartment. They noticed she was obsessed with Garnett's health, sometimes strangely calm when he was at his sickest. On January 17th, Garnett was admitted to the hospital after another seizure. Lacey posted updates on Facebook. "Please pray. Garnett's sodium is dangerously high." But the truth was chilling. In the hospital bathroom, away from the eyes of nurses and doctors, Lacey took syringes and funneled high doses of salt water directly into Garnett's feeding tube. His body convulsed in pain. His little face twisted, his stomach swelled, his brain began to swell from the imbalance. She watched it happen, and she documented it online. The last days of Garnett's life were agony. His body shut down piece by piece. And yet, as he lay dying, his mother's priority was not his survival, but her narrative. Her role as the grieving, struggling, saintly mother. By January 23rd, Garnett Spears was dead, poisoned by the hands of the person he trusted most. At first, doctors were baffled. How could a child's sodium spike to such extreme fatal levels? But soon, suspicion turned inward. Toward the mother, hospital staff noticed inconsistencies. Nurses saw Lacey taking Garnett's feeding tube into the bathroom when no one was watching. Security footage later confirmed it, and toxicology reports sealed the truth. The levels of sodium in Garnett's blood were not accidental. They were deliberate. Investigators dug deeper into Lacey's past. What they found was chilling. From the time Garnett was a baby, she claimed he was constantly ill. Friends reported she seemed strangely proud of his illnesses, often eager to share every detail online. Doctors confirmed that Garnett's medical history didn't match his supposed conditions. Most of his symptoms were manufactured. Neighbors told police about the bags of salt, about her obsession with sympathy, about her need to post about Garnett every hour of every day. And when detectives scrolled through her social media, the evidence was damning. Post after post, back in the hospital. Please pray for my little fighter. Photos of Garnett hooked to machines shared with the world like trophies. The illusion of the devoted mother crumbled, and what remained was horror, a child murdered for attention. In 2015, the trial of Lacey Spears began. The courtroom was packed, journalists, community members, Garnett's relatives, all seeking answers to the unthinkable. Prosecutors laid out their case. Lacey Spears had deliberately poisoned her son with salt to manufacture illness and gain sympathy online. They showed charts of Garnett's sodium spikes. They showed surveillance footage of Lacey carrying his feeding bag into the bathroom. They read her social media posts aloud, exposing the twisted performance she had crafted. Garnett Spears did not die from sickness, the prosecutor told the jury. He died because his mother made him sick. The defense tried to argue that Garnett's death was accidental, that Lacey was a misguided but loving mother. But the weight of evidence was crushing. Witnesses took the stand. Neighbors described her obsession with illness. Doctors testified that Garnett's feeding tube was unnecessary. One nurse broke down in tears as she recalled Garnett's final days, describing the helplessness of watching a child suffer while knowing something wasn't right. The emotional tension was unbearable. Family members wept, jurors shook their heads, and through it all, Lacey remained cold, detached, sometimes crying, sometimes expressionless, but never with the raw grief one would expect of a mother whose child had died. The jury heard everything. The lies, the manipulations, the poison, and when the verdict came, the silence was suffocating. Lacey Spears was found guilty of second-degree murder and first-degree manslaughter. The judge did not hold back. In your world, he told her, Garnett was a prop, something to gain you attention, something you used, and then you killed him. She was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. For Garnett's family, the sentence brought little comfort. His father, estranged from Lacey, spoke of the devastation of losing his only child. His grandparents wept, broken by the betrayal. The community of Nyack was left reeling. Parents who had once pitied Lacey for her sick little boy now realized they had been manipulated, deceived. The sympathy they poured out had fueled a murder, and online, strangers who had followed Lacey's every post were haunted. They had liked, commented, prayed for a boy who never needed prayers. He needed protection from his mother. The case of Lacey Spears forces us to ask a chilling question. How far will someone go for attention? Munchausen by proxy is rare, but when it appears, it leaves devastation. A child used as a pawn. A life stolen for sympathy. A boy's suffering turned into social media content. Garnett Spears should have been in kindergarten that year. He should have been running through the snow, learning letters, drawing pictures. Instead, he lay in a hospital bed poisoned by salt, while his mother typed updates for strangers online. In the end, the image of Garnett's final days lingers. The small boy convulsing in pain. The monitors beeping. His mother's calm face lit by the glow of her phone screen, and the silence that followed, when the machines went still, and the world realized the truth. Because behind the hashtags, behind the posts, behind the carefully curated image of the perfect mother, there was nothing but manipulation, and a boy who paid the ultimate price.